I want to welcome everyone. I think this is a really exciting opportunity for us as a company. And I've talked to Larry about what I was wanting to accomplish by doing this. And really, we want to capture and preserve the history of some of the early days of Bohannan Houston. We also want to honor our past and the leadership contributions that Larry has made to this organization that sustains all of us and our customers and the communities we serve. And we're also wrapping up the Association of Talent Development's Learning Week, which has been a lot of activity here at the office, focused all week long on talent development and learning opportunities in our organization. And so I wanted to wrap up our week by having a conversation with Larry so that we could learn from his business and leadership insights from his life and his career at Bohannan Houston. So I appreciate you getting up early to do this with us. I wanted to start with your retirement. So you retired from BHI in 2002 after 38 years of service.
That's close.
17 as the CEO.
I don't remember all that.
I do.
It was a long time.
So one of the questions I had was, what was it like to walk away?
It wasn't fun. I did not like to retire. I thought it would be fun, but it's really boring for the most part. So I wish I'd stayed a little longer. Being healthy and still vigorous, I could have done some good, but I didn't. I retired. So here we are, 18 years later.
I think so. That's the math.
January 1st, 2002.
Mm-hmm. So
After 30, I thought it was 35 years, but it could have been 38.
I think it's 38.
Counting the part,
The 3 years.
moonlighting.
Right, we'll talk about that. So we'll just go with those numbers.
Okay,
So
whatever you say.
what are you doing in retirement with those years since you left? How do you stay connected?
Did you change the subjects?
No. It's there. You said you could be impromptu.
I can.
So how do you spend it?
How do I spend it?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Right now, taking care of a sick wife and a sick sister,
Yeah.
which is not really all that enjoyable. I read a lot. I ride my bike every morning. I do about 65 miles a week,
Wow.
so I stay more or less fit, except for the beer every other Wednesday night. A lot of the old people that used to work here we get together for beer and talk, and that's fun. I go shooting with Dennis once in a while. I go to dinner with Silas and Laura once in a while, my wife and I. For those of you who don't know, my wife has Alzheimer's. And right now it's not too bad. I can leave like I did today without having to worry too much. It's not a real exciting thing, but I get by day to day.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we're interested in your life after BHI. And I think what I want to do is start with your early career.
Okay.
So let's go there.
Okay.
So tell me about
that's
how.
where I thought we were going.
Yeah. Tell me about your early career with BHI, how you came to BHI.
Okay. Well, I'd like to start a little earlier than that,
All
if
right.
you don't mind.
Sure.
I know most of the people here. Some I don't, and I'm glad that people I don't know are here. Long ago, in a place far away, I was born. In 1937, I was born, so I'll be 82 in a couple of weeks. I've seen a lot, experienced a lot. It's been a fascinating trip. I grew up in a little village called Fort Sumner on the east central side of New Mexico. There were 40 people in my class, and the village had about 2,000 people. It was different than now. It was safe, it was free, it was secure, it was fun. It was just different. Mm-hmm. Things were different then. And that's when I started to work. I was 10 when I had my first job. And it was really something. I swept out the local drugstore every day after school, cleaning the floor. And they were very generous. I got 10 cents for a half an hour. At that, and you won't believe this, then, seriously, a dime, I could go to the movies matinee on Saturday for a dime, and I could buy 2 ice cream cones for a dime. Mm-hmm. So times have changed. Anyway, I graduated from high school in Carlsbad, and then I went to White Sands, started my career. And all of this leads up to my work here, is why I'm talking about it. I went to New Mexico, well, the Aggies, New Mexico Aggies, not New Mexico State then, and worked as a co-op student at White Sands Missile Range. I worked with a very wonderful, pleasant gentleman who ran all of the telemetry, radar, optical tracking stations for all of the project firings, some 80 stations. And he and I did that for 6 months, and I learned a very great deal about science and technology and that sort of thing, just working there and from him. From there, I dropped out of New Mexico State because I couldn't afford it and I was far from home, so I came here and went to UNM for 2 semesters. And then I dumbly got married and had to go to work to support my family. So first I worked at a blueprint shop for probably, I don't know, 6 or 7 months. I applied at the Forest Service for a field survey position. This was in 1957, I think, 55. Anyway, about 6 months later, I got a call and I got a job at the Forest Service. It was really interesting in that this region of the Forest Service got the first electronic distance measuring equipment. Think about this. This is back in the middle 50s. It's called a tellurometer. It was made in South Africa, and we had the only one in the Department of Agriculture. So as a result, our survey team got to travel all over the western U.S. to almost all of the national forests and some of the national parks. We did work for the Park Service. I always remember Bryce Canyon and Montana are the ones that I remember the most. I worked there, excuse me, for 12 years. The first 6 was on the survey team. The second 6, they had a position open for a photogrammetric technician trainee, which was compiling maps with a stereo plotter from aerial photography. I applied for and got that job. And for the next 6 years, that was what I did, except for the last 3, in trying to support my family and having a hard time getting a raise at the Forest Service. I took a job with Jerry Bohannan at Bohannan Engineers, working afternoons after work and evenings, and then doing drafting, and then on weekends doing surveying in the field all over the state. And I managed that for I don't know, 2 or 3 years, and it wore me out because I was working 80 and 90 hours a week. So, and I guess that's where I got my work ethic, because after that it was easy. So I quit with Jerry and decided, I finally got a raise at the Forest Service where I could support my family, and went about, I don't know, 4 or 5 months without working both jobs. And Jerry called me. And he said, and some of you will appreciate this, especially Silas. He said, can you come over to my house and have a big orange? I want to talk to you. Well, the big orange was a big orange cocktail, and which he enjoyed thoroughly. And so I said, sure. And this is the heart of the story, in my opinion, because Jerry Bohannan is a special person to me. And you'll see as I talk about this, as you get old, you get a little emotional about stuff. I don't know why, but you do. But I went to his house, and Jerry was a very straightforward, no mess around kind of guy. And he did make the drink before he started talking. Had a sip and said, how would you like to have your own company? Just like that. And I was a little taken aback, of course, but we talked about it some more, and what he had in mind was starting a photogrammetry company. He knew what I did at the Forest Service, and he knew what my work ethic was at his place, at Bohannan Engineers. He said, do you have any money? I said, well, not any, really, from payday to payday. He said, do you have any saved? And I said, well, I have my retirement. He said, why don't you quit? We'll take your retirement out and buy a stereo plotter. I'll buy a building and supplies, and we'll start our company, and you can have half and I'll have half. So we did. And it was called Bohannan Huston Photogrammetry. We were in the black our first year, which is amazing. And what was I going to say? Oh, we had a little building over on, Palo Duro, I think is the name of it, off of Carlisle. And it was a friend of his who was a surveyor who had died, and his wife didn't know what to do with the building and all the drafting tables, and so she gave it to Jerry. And this started the miracles that happened to Jerry and I throughout. And this really gets me. So anyway, I went to work there. We were in the black. Our biggest client was the Forest Service, which is my former employer. We worked, made maps for them. We made real 3D models from scratch of rivers, of mountains. We made a model of the Sandias. We made a model of the Tonto National Forest in Arizona, the Coronado. Where else? We made several. And then we made some private models for fishermen in Colorado, where this guy had private fishing. And that was the most beautiful. We had some talented people that I didn't do that. They did it. But we did that, and then we both grew. Jerry grew, the photogrammetry company grew. And after a couple of years, we got together, and Jerry said, you know, you got a secretary, I got a secretary. You got draftsmen, I got draft people, you got draft people. Why are we spending double the money? Let's put this thing together and have one company. And he said, and I'll hire someone. He said, I hate business development. And I said, I'm scared to death of business development. And he said, I'll hire someone. And he hired Jack Westman. And we merged the companies, and it became Bohannan, Westman, Huston, and Associates. And we started out from there. And then we grew on Carlisle, and then the good things started happening. Well, there are already many good things. But we were in two separate buildings, even joined together, because the plotter was hard to move and this sort of thing. So anyway, he knew a man named K.L. House who had a construction company. I don't know if any of you know him or knew of him, but he had sold a bunch of land in downtown Albuquerque, I think, and don't quote me, but I think for urban renewal. And he had all this money and he didn't know what to do with it, and Jerry was his buddy, so he came to Jerry and he said, "You guys, you know you're separated and all this, why don't you let me build you a building? And you won't have to furnish any money or anything, and you can just move in and pay me rent and we'll get it financed and all that if you want." So he built us a brand new cinder block building on Carlisle next to Jerry's Bohannan's office, and we moved in there with Bohannan Associates, who were architects and structural engineers. And that went on for a while. Journal Center became one of our clients, and there came the next miracle and wonderful people. We were on Carlisle, we were working, we were the engineer for the infrastructure here, and it wasn't growing quite as fast as Lowell Hare and Tom Lang, who was the owner of Journal, wanted it to. So they came to Jerry and I. By then Jack had left, by the way, on to greater wonderful things. And they came to us, and like Jerry did to me, when he said, "How would you like your own business?" Journal Center came to us and said, "How would you like your own building?" Again, this was our second miracle, in my opinion. So we said, well, we can't, we just built this building over here on Carlisle not that long ago, and we can't afford to move. And they said, "Oh, well, you don't have to worry about any of that. We'll do a long-term lease on the land over here where we are now. We'll build the building, we'll pay for the whole thing, and we'll give you guys half." And Jerry said, "Well, that's really nice, but we can't even afford to move, much less afford any kind of a building." They said, "Well, don't worry about that. Here, we'll give you $50,000, and that should cover your move." Can you believe that? And I feel that it was the reputation of Jerry and me and Jack and the way that we did our business, which was honest. So that was what happened. Any other questions?
Okay, question number
Miracles do
2.
happen. That's the longest part of this.
It's a
I
great
guarantee you.
story. It's a great story. And
It really
one of the
is.
themes that keeps coming up is how blessed you
Oh.
were throughout the years. And we feel that still today. So we still benefit from that.
Well, look at this.
Yeah. It's an abundant
Beautiful.
life. All right, let's get back on track, Jim. Are you ready for another
Yeah,
question?
before I cry.
Okay. All right, so we've talked about your work ethic, what motivated you in some of the early days. What was your role you've talked about your role. What was out of your comfort zone as a new business owner, a young professional? What was out of your comfort zone?
You moved again.
No, it's right here, banking.
Oh, yeah.
You're right here.
Oh, we skipped these two. Okay.
Yeah, well, you kind of covered it.
Well, okay, but I will answer this one. What was my role when we first did all of this? Well, it was, of course, photogrammetry.
Right.
And then they were so nice to give me banking. And I was terrified of bankers, to be honest with you. The most elite person in my hometown was the banker. And he was way up there, and I grew up in a funny atmosphere there. So But anyway, they didn't like banking, and they gave me that. So
So Jerry was engineering.
Jerry was engineering, Jack Westman was business, I was photogrammetry and survey, and then they gave me personnel, banking, and my client maintenance.
Which is what we're going to talk about.
Yes, okay, now what's the next question?
So what was out of your comfort zone?
Oh, God, banking. Because I, like other things that I was temporarily terrified of, it was banking. Cold calls was another thing.
Sales.
But cold sales, especially on the telephone. I have a phobia about phones, and I'm not sure why or where it came from, but I'd rather do this, talk to you and see your face. So I have a hard time on the phone. Banking. They threw me into banking. I had no clue what to do, how to do it, anything. But again, I had a blessing. Went to Albuquerque National, was our banker. Jerry hated banking, and Jack was busy doing business development. So they took me down and introduced me to my loan officer, whose name was Ed Jory, and he was one of the people in the Albuquerque National Bank back then. And I told him, I said, you know, I don't have a clue what I'm doing and how to do it. And he said, well, let's sit down and I'll talk to you and tell you what you need to do. And he did. And that was my banking Bible, so to speak, from then on, and it worked like a champ.
What did he tell you?
He told me, don't ever lie to me. Don't ever borrow money that you don't need. Don't ever tell me you're going to pay me back when you can't. And when you can't, come and tell me when you're going to pay me and how you're going to pay me. And if you ever go back on your word of when and how, then I'm no longer your banker. And so I worked extremely diligently doing that, and it worked out. One time we had a little trouble, but most of the time it worked out. Okay, next question.
Let's talk about client management.
Oh, okay.
So we can get through all these topics. What was your philosophy when it came to managing clients?
Let me check my cheat sheet.
Okay. I can tell you what it is, but
I know you can.
there it is. Let's see. Nope, that's not it.
That's part of it.
Come back. There it is.
Oh, okay. Common sense was my client management philosophy, and that's doing unto others as you would have them do to you. Just think about this. When you call someone to fix your plumbing, and they tell you it's going to be this much money and I'll be there this time and it's going to take this long to do, and they don't do that, how do you feel? So I made that a philosophy of how we did business. We never promised something we didn't absolutely bust our butts to take care of. We were honest about the price, and that's just common sense. Treat everyone else like you would like to be treated. First time, some of these are cliches. First time right, on time was our motto. Even if we had to work all night and sleep, take a nap on the drafting table, and we did that a lot, and that led to some other things that happened with this company. But in other words, what we committed to, we made good. We never ever discussed with a client something we didn't know anything about. Nor did we ever make a presentation to a group like this that we didn't know what we were talking about. It's the worst thing you can do to get yourself in trouble with people you're trying to do business with. When they find out you don't know what the hell you're talking about, then they're not going to do business with you. The biggest mistake in client maintenance is continuing to work for a client that doesn't pay. We have been notorious for that, to be honest with you, especially when I don't know about now, Carrie knows, back in the good old days, but we continued to work for clients who just didn't pay. And all that does is make it more difficult to meet payroll, to buy equipment, to do the things that you need to do. So that was one of the things that we really worked hard at finally. I don't know how it goes now, but if you're working for clients who don't pay, you should give them up and go get some that do. And it's usually the private sector. It's not the cities or the counties or the federal government or the state. It's usually the private sector. The last thing is make good relationships, the same kind of relationships with the clients as you make with your staff. Get to know them, learn to like them, learn to respect them, be honest with them. I can't emphasize enough that the whole thing is personal relationships. In work, in play, in client maintenance, in everything, in banking, you just have to develop that. And if you like people and you like your job, it's usually pretty easy to do.
Tell them about the Army Corps when you went, and you told me a story about how they had a little welcome.
No, I don't.
Oh, come
do
on.
that.
It's important for the rest
The
of the story.
Fort Worth district of the Army Corps of Engineers was one of the many districts we worked for. They were our largest client after we lost Mountain Bell. My relationship was so good with the district headquarters in Fort Worth that when I would go down there, they would have these banners up in the office, and it was an open space office. Welcome to Fort Worth, Larry Huston of Bohannan, Houston. And I mean, they were big. And it just embarrassed the horrible. Embarrassed. I was embarrassed. I'm kind of a shy guy anyway, really. And but that shows you what kind of a relationship you can have with your client if you work at it. And the result was millions of dollars worth of work from the Corps of Engineers. Not only there, but Albuquerque, Kansas City District, LA District. Unbelievable.
Thank you for sharing that, because I thought it was important later.
It's embarrassing.
Okay, let's talk about early adoption.
Okay.
Are you with me here?
Yep.
All right, so you take it from here. Tell us, we know that a lot of the technology direction of this
Yeah.
company was predicated on your leadership.
We've always been early adopters. Jerry started it. He worked hard at looking at technology primarily to do survey computations. So we always had the latest computer equipment, although it wasn't really computers then, to do survey calculations. Well, the first ones looked like an old-fashioned typewriter where you punched in the numbers and cranked the thing. Unbelievable. You wouldn't believe what I've seen and experienced since I was born. I mean, things have changed so dramatically, it's amazing. Anyway, so we always adopted early technology in the surveying business. Electronic distance measuring. Jerry always budgeted for equipment, the newest and the latest and the most accurate. And so that, of course, rubbed off on me. And then in the photogrammetry area, we could tell it was going to digital. So we bought coordinated graphs that punched cards of coordinates back in the day, and we just were always like that. And then the budgeting became the most critical thing, and that's one thing I'm really proud of. We always thoroughly and with vigor budgeted for new equipment to keep the most latest technology in then digenetics, in the engineering side, in the surveying side, and the photogrammetry side. We got the first VACs in the private sector. When they first came out, they were made by Digital Equipment Company across the interstate, which had a big production plant here. Sandia Labs had the only other one in Albuquerque, or in the state as far as I can remember. That was a virtual memory machine, and it took up about half as much of this room. It was huge. And we hired 2 programmers, Bob Greenlee and Dana Wood, to run it, and we started software development and for survey, for mapping, and for engineering. And then we got so uppity, I guess is the word, so confident, we opened a new company, or started a new company called Digenetics, selling software nationally. And although that was a financial disaster, because we couldn't compete with the people that had 500 employees developing software in the country, selling it to the cities, states, and government. But what did that lead to? We finally had to shut Digenetics down, but it led to what you see here today. All the latest equipment, cutting edge technology, and developing the products that you need to do to serve your clients. It's really cool.
I was going to ask you about managing risks. When you were always in the front and adopting early.
This is easy. To manage risk, you hire some really smart people.
There you go.
Who are not afraid to try new things.
There you go.
And you can see some of them here. Relentless planning, not strategic planning.
We're going to go there next.
I hate strategic planning. I don't know if you still do it or not, but it's terrible. Preparing annual budgets, making sure you know what the latest is, how much it costs, so if you need to finance it, you can sell it to the banker, and we always did. We always got our financing, and we always paid it. And I think now things are better and you don't have to finance as much as you used to, but we really used to have to do that a lot. Okay.
All right.
Strategic planning.
Yeah, let's talk about strategic planning. The question is, what do you think about strategic planning? What's your philosophy?
Strategic planning is a big waste of time. The reason is you can't predict the future. What you need to do is to be able to make decisions and turn on a dime and plan for contingencies, not strategically, but plan for contingencies for what you know can happen. You know that sometimes you're going to have a layoff. You don't have enough work to keep everybody busy. You know that sometimes you're going to reach a credit limit at the bank. What are you going to do when that happens? When that happened to me, I went to my friends that hung the big banner and I said, hey guys, tomorrow we have to close our doors if you don't get me a check today. And guess what? We're still open. They wrote us a check for several $100,000 that they were late in paying, the Corps of Engineers, and that saved us. So I believe that you should always keep a list, and this is a terrible thing and one of the hardest things to do, and Silas knows this. I believe you should always keep a list of the 10% of the people that you would let go if you have to let them go. And the reason for that is that forces you to look strategically at the people that you have and understand which are the best ones and the ones that really keep your business going. And that's hard, but that's what you should do. And you don't ever wait and hope for something to come along. And we learned the hard way about that, because you do that. You have a tendency, you don't want to lay people off. You hope something's going to come along. And to be honest, that hurts your business and hurts the people that work for you if you hang on to it too long. That goes along with with keeping working for clients who don't pay.
Right.
Okay?
Okay, so we talked about strategic planning, that's a business thing. Let's talk about people management. So,
Okay.
as a CEO, you and Janet managed HR and all of the admin and all of the people?
We didn't have as many people as you had, but we had 109 people, which is significant. And we weren't a big bureaucracy. I mean that kindly. Janet Speakman, who most of you know, I'm sure, her and I did everything. Insurance, banking, personnel, government reports, planning parties, I mean everything having to do with administration. We were a really good team, to be honest with you. And we didn't have HR people and all this other stuff. So what was the point?
How do you manage people?
Oh,
And let's see where we are.
well, anyway.
Right here.
Yeah,
There it is.
managing people.
Yeah.
That's the most important thing in the whole deal. And that's common sense again. You will hear from me a lot of common sense things. If you just think about how you want to be treated, that's how you should treat other people. I believe in management by wandering around. You don't always have time to do that, but if you have a group of people, like you're a project manager, and you have a group of people striving toward the same end, you need to know what they're doing and how they feel and where they're headed technically. You can't just let them go. You need to know them personally so you know they're not their faults, but, well, their shortcomings and their attributes so that you can put them to the best use. You can't do that if you don't know people. So I'm a real believer in asking and listening. Asks people what they're doing, how they feel, whether they like the company, whether they like their job, what are their hobbies, everything about them. And you get to know them, and then they're easy to manage, and they trust you, and you trust them. And so that's my management by wandering around philosophy. Listen, suggest, and the others pay staff what they're worth and keep good benefits that make them happy. We did that. We were early adopters of no smoking. We were one of the first. We got an award from the American Lung Association, I think. Was it? Some of you remember. Where was I?
Just the work environment, keeping people happy.
Oh, keeping people happy. Our 401k, We did early on with 100% match, by the way. I don't know, what are you matching now?
80.
That's pretty damn good, I'll tell you. So that's pay their staff for their worth. I'm a firm believer you don't have to have all owners in a company, but you have to pay the people that are their worth. And some people, and I think engineering is the best example. There are some people that just want to be engineers. They don't care about managing people or anything. They want to see an end product that they help develop, and those kinds of engineers are worth all the money in the world that really get the work done with no BS.
That's good. Good insight. Okay, we can talk about when you lacked expertise.
Oh.
Who did you rely on for advice?
Silas, Dennis, Lewis, Leslie. You hire people, here's what happens. You should hire people that are better than you and smarter than you, especially if you're going to try to manage them. Now, you lose a few. While I was here, we formed from Bohannan Houston staff probably, well, less than a dozen, more than a half a dozen companies. Some competitors, some not. We had the lady that owns Flying Star worked here. She left and started Flying Star. Several engineering companies, Chuck Easterling, a photogrammetry company, Tom Mann, a financial services company, Lee Trussell. Those were good, smart people that were key. And that's the risk you take by hiring someone that's better than you. But while they're here, and those that choose to stay are a tremendous benefit to the company.
That's still relevant, just trying to get the most out of people while they're with us. So
Yeah,
that hasn't
no kidding.
changed.
Again, forming key relationships is just so important. And I don't mean, you don't have to know everybody in the whole stupid company. The people that you deal with daily that have the same goals on a project, that are doing the same work, those people you need to get together to be a team that likes each other and likes their work. You can't do all this that I'm talking about, but you should try. Okay.
Okay, let's look at, I want to see where we can go in the time we have. Do you want to look at failure and
Yeah.
disappointments?
That's fine.
All right. So when it comes to failure and disappointments, looking back, is there something you should have done differently?
Oh, God, yes. Failure, I look at failure, first, I'm a positive thinker. That's another thing I got to stress, that my mom, who was my mentor, made me read, I think it was Edward Vincent Peale? Norman Vincent Peale's book, The Power of Positive Thinking. She made me read it twice when I was in high school. And I did, and ever since then I've been a believer in positive thinking. So I look at failure positively and say you learn from it. It's like Digenetics failed, but look what it got the company. I mean, as a business, it was a failure. The geodetic company, as a business, was a failure, but look what it brought the company in the way of LiDAR work. So failures help if you can get by them positively. Okay? This was a long deal.
It is. We've
It
already
took us
passed
3
that.
hours to do this. And we're trying to do it in an hour.
How about this one? What's the hardest
Oh,
thing you
God.
ever had to do? Let's
Hardest
talk about
thing in
that.
the world, and all of you already know this, common sense, is laying people off. and firing people. And the worst thing that ever happened was when we had to, and you'll forgive me for what I'm about to say, but we had to shut down Digenetics. We had about 20 staff. Leslie was the only one there at the time that this happened, I believe. Is that right? That's here. Kathy, there was a gal named Kathy Koval. Anyway, it was right before Christmas. The timing was terrible, but I didn't want people thinking they were going to have a job and going out and buying a bunch of presents and getting in debt, only to find out after Christmas that they didn't have a job. So I chose Christmas, before Christmas, to shut the company down and let the people go. The first words out of Kathy Koval's mouth were, "Well, Larry, Merry effing Christmas to you too." And so those kinds of things are really hard. That's by far, of anything you do, firing people or letting them go is the hardest thing.
So you said that when you look at failure, it's educational. What did you learn from Digenetics and then Mountain Bell?
Oh, we didn't cover Mountain Bell, but Mountain Bell, when we merged into Bohannan, Westman, Houston, Westman bought Mountain Bell work with him. And they became our biggest client. We did route surveys, cable design and distribution systems all over the state for Mountain Bell, and in Colorado, I think, too. One day they called and being our biggest client said, "I'm sorry, we don't have any more work. We're stopping." And they stopped just that day. So what we learned from that and Digenetics was that you need to diversify, hustle new clients, and that's what we did. And we became a full-service engineering company, civil related, along with the computer and spatial data and survey, which no other company in the state provided all of those services that we did and that you guys still do. We didn't, we even hired an architect. Do you still have an architect? We used to have an architect, but we developed structural engineering. We already had a strong community development group and more in the civil infrastructure for everybody. State Highway became a client after we lost Mountain Bell. So worked hard at diversification, and that seemed to do it. Our reputation saved us when Mountain Bell left because we had good clients that stuck with us, believed in us, and helped us, Journal Center being one.
Good.
Is that working?
That's good. You're good.
Oh,
All right.
we're over.
Well, I don't want to just finish without some of these important questions. So we're going to keep going.
Okay.
If people want to leave, they can, but I wouldn't.
Won't bother me.
So one of my questions was there ever a time you didn't think the business would make it? And you referred to that
Yeah, that's when
earlier.
we'd run out of credit limit at the bank. Just clients weren't paying us, and that's when I went to Fort Worth and got the check, and that saved us.
So you went down there.
I went down there personally, and that's not normal for
No.
the government to issue a check like that. But they went to their accounting, the people that hung up the stupid banners, went to their accounting group in the Corps, and they cut a check right there, and that saved us.
You flew home.
I want to talk, huh?
You flew home.
And I flew down
with the
there
check.
and flew home. Check.
Yeah, I love it.
And Jerry loved me after that.
What are you most proud of? What's something that you got right?
There's several, but one of the things is the 401k. Another is our health insurance. when we became self-insured, when that was really not a popular thing to do. And it saved the company and the employees over a period of time, millions of dollars. Is that not right, Kerry? And I'm proud of that. I'm proud of the fact that we listened to people we did business with. And that was one of the things that when we confronted them, Janet and I, insurance is too expensive. We can't afford this. We need to do something. We need to improve our health benefits. We want you guys to come up with something that'll do that. And they did. They went back and they thought about it, and they came back and they said, we have an idea about self-insurance. And we adopted it, and it saved us tons of money and provided better health care for the staff.
Okay. We've really talked about the good fortune that you experienced. You called them miracles. Being in the right place at the right time,
Yeah.
and having just blessed relationships. I had asked what was one of the best things that happened to you, and you mentioned the building here.
Oh, both buildings.
Right, right.
3 buildings. Carlisle, 1 and 2. Unbelievable. She asked me what sacrifices I made. I never made any sacrifices. It's all been a blessing and a wonderful experience. Carrie is the one who has made the most sacrifice for Bohannan Houston, and that's when you had to go to Las Cruces. And he did that. We uprooted him from his home, didn't make him. He volunteered to go to Cruces with he and his family. And that was a big emotional move for him. And he's the one that sacrificed more than anybody. I wanted to make sure I brought that up.
Okay. You had left that open.
I did.
Now I know why.
I got Carrie written right here.
Oh, you do? Okay, so we're right here. We're nearing the end, but there's one thing I want to talk about because we've all heard about it, and I want to understand it, and it's the dock parties. Why dock parties? How did it come about, and
Okay.
why did you do that?
Like I said, we didn't really have a dock till we moved to the new building that House built. So there weren't dock parties before that, but there were parties. We always had fun. I thought Jerry and I both thought that having fun at work and at play was important. So it started when we would do all-nighters to meet a deadline, catching naps on the drafting tables and stuff. Jerry bought a brand new, huge conference table one time, and so on Friday afternoon, and that started it, we had a party around that conference table with treats and beer. And it was a fun party because there were 20 people working there, and we all tried to get under the table, like stuffing a car, you know. And that started the parties at the work. And when we moved to the new building, we were on a 4.5-day work week, and we had parties at the dock, and where we had beer and people socialized and talked, and what it did, it made everybody feel like they were together. I mean, we knew each other, and we had fun with each other, and the relationships were beautiful for the people that worked in the company. So I really like that idea of having a get-together every now and then. I know it's tough now to do something like that in this environment. The PC world, political correctness world, just drives me nuts. Being from the old-timey thing where things were fun.
We can probably find ways that are appropriate to
And
interact with each other.
I don't know if you still do, but we had sports teams. We had a ski team that competed. We had golf tournaments. We had co-ed softball teams. We had men's softball teams. We had a soccer team. But anyway, next.
Next. Okay. So next is reflections.
Okay.
All right. So
You're first.
I know. And I'm really taken back that we're here on a Friday morning after hearing the stories that you've told and the struggles, some of them, and the blessings.
Not all of them.
Not all of them, but some of them. And I just can't help but think about the abundance of the success that we enjoy being here. The day after payroll was made for all of us. And I think about your guts and your grit and the vision that you and others had that have brought us to where we are, that sustain us and the communities that we serve. And I want to give you the last word because your name is on the building, and we want to know from you, what is it that we need to remember? What is it you want us to take away? What is it you want us to do?
I really loved what I did from the very beginning, from working for the Forest Service up till I retired, every phase of it. And I enjoyed the relationships with the people, some of which I still maintain and have endured into my retirement. I've been gone for 18 years, and yet I still know most everyone in here. We have lunch, try to have lunch once a month with some of the staff that I was operationally responsible for, which I value very much. I value being able to come to the Christmas parties and the picnics and see and meet new people. I'm sorry I haven't met, I mean, I walked through the office and I probably don't know half of the people. I enjoyed, again, our relationships, and I like the business. It's constructive. There's nothing destructive about it. We build things. We make things. And it's for the good of the community and the world. And it's just a good, it's a good profession, I think, and I love it. I love what I did. I love photogrammetry and spatial data and survey and engineering. I don't know a hell of a lot about engineering, but over 35 years, a significant amount did rub off on me. And I think you all should do as much as possible to develop the personal and work relationships with the people that you work with. I think that's so important and makes the work environment much easier. And thanks for continuing to have me. I love it.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you. No, sit down. We could have gone another hour, I'll tell you.
Have. And if you have questions for Larry, something that we didn't pull out that is something you want to ask, he said he's open to that if anybody has anything that's
Yeah,
on
I'd be
their
happy
mind.
to answer if you don't have to go back to work.
Sure. What time is it?
Okay,
I think
not
we
all
did
at
good.
once.
We did good. If they don't have anything left, it's good. Well, thank you again for being here and doing this for us. We appreciate it.
Did you learn anything?
Yeah. I think we did.